Thank you, Ella. It was gorgeous. Ella, already graduated from college. Did a gig on the Broadway, so reason to go to New York City. Thank you to all the friends that helped put this together. This couldn't be more beautiful. I also want to thank everyone for being here today, especially those that traveled. What a beautiful sight you all are. I can only imagine how pissed off James right now. Many of you know the terrible affliction that Jan had. She had a few, but the one that worried her most went by the scientific name FOMO. Jan had a profound fear of missing out on a good conversation with her family and friends. Jan loved to talk. She loved to connect. And she loved you all. It was so much of what she lived for. So that when she could no longer communicate with those that she loved, I knew the end was near. Losing a loved one, you know you're in other losses. For me, the hardest hits have been the unexpected little mundane things. They were just part of daily life together. Like this morning, I opened the bathroom drawer and found a single Q-tip left in the holder. Jan and I had a thing about refilling the Q-tips. It was a game we played. It was not even an agreed upon game. It was an unspoken contest. But not being the one to take the last Q-tip, because that meant you had to refill the whole thing. And we'll be this little and go through that 30-second test. It's actually harder than you think. When you put them in there, you turn sideways and you get straight. It got to the point where we started reaching into the refill under the sink, pulling out a single Q-tip to change the count so the other person went in there. We did the same thing. That went on for several days. Finally, one morning, I opened the drawer. Jan stood right there with a grin on her face. I fully expected to find a single Q-tip remaining. To my surprise, the holder was refilled. That was so cheap. She was such a good soul. I could see out of the corner of my eye that she was looking at me expecting. But instead of turning and thanking her, I instead ran around the bathroom hollering, "The Q-tip fairy! The Q-tip fairy is coming!" Jan always prided herself at not laughing at my jokes. But she couldn't avoid a smile at that level of silliness. And that joke endured through many iterations between us. But this morning, when I opened the drawer and saw that last Q-tip, I had a realization that the Q-tip fairy was coming. And then a sinking feeling slipped over me. That Jan was going to win this one. Winning was kind of a habit of hers. It had to be. Jan threw a long and distinguished list of likely terminal conditions of our life. She could never afford to lose a fight. In this, she was not alone. Along these journeys, we came to meet many others going through similar challenges. We found that struggling through adversity with others, especially the life and death variety, builds tight bonds. These ties bind even the most unlikely people together. We bonded so tightly to each other's struggles that we ended up as family. And time and again, we faced pretty lousy odds. Many fights were won, but when we lost one of these battles, that meant we lost part of our family. Irma, Melissa, Susie, Jamie, Nathan, Christian, Rod, Tiffany, so many other family members. Each a soul taken from us, but each continuing the journey with us, always in our thoughts. Jan's resilience through adversity was legendary. She won a far greater share of battles than anyone ever thought she would. Power, faith, luck, karma, destiny, some other combination. Actually, one of the traits that likely helped her the most was obedience. Yeah, not to me. Jan benefited from the most wonderful team of doctors. From her CF dogs, transplant dogs, cancer dogs. We were incredibly fortunate. And whatever they told her to do, she did. It sounds pretty basic and easy. But how many times have all of us ignored something that our doctor told us to do, or just not done? Most of us have slightly easier to do. If the docs told Jan to jump, she would simply ask, "When would you like me to come down?" Her heroic feats of survival earned her the nickname Wonder Woman. She left nothing on the table. She took every chance she was given, never thinking that it was not going to work. Jan never lacked optimism. The one power Jan lacked was the knowledge of how to let go. A couple hours before the end, when she was visibly struggling, her sister Dot wanted to put her at ease. Dot went to her, bent down, kissed her on the forehead, and whispered, "It's okay. You can go now." Jan, who could no longer speak, looked up into Dot's eyes and wondered, "Nuh-uh." So let it be known, Jan did not put gentle on the back. Wonder Woman raged against the dying of the light. So, just goodbye, my Wonder Woman. Goodbye, my new tip fairy. Goodbye, my heart.
The Kibler family. I'm Shrum. I met Jan my freshman year at Bishop Carroll High School in Evansburg, Pennsylvania. We all walked into school in our ugly gray uniforms. Jan didn't blend in. She was pure sunshine. She had a gorgeous head of long blonde curls, a huge smile, and a laugh you could hear everywhere. She was warm and welcoming, and we became friends right away. She was smart and funny. too. And all of those traits never changed through the years. She never missed a party, although there were a few we probably should have missed. As a teenager, I was unaware of what a fighter she was. I really don't know how she did it. And fast forward all these years, she was still such a fighter. Same huge smile, same big heart, same laugh, and I still don't know how she did it. We had a fun bunch of friends that loved her dearly. We all met at the beach in 2016 and made a few other trips, and it was great to reconnect. And then I ended up in Raleigh, and my husband and I were delighted we could see Jan and Mom. You can't talk about Jan without mentioning Noel. What a pair we were. We asked Noel one night how she was, and he spoke with such admiration for her. It was something I'll never forget. We loved witnessing their love, and of course we laughed at their funny banter back and forth. I'm happy to say that Jan was my friend.
I was trying to think of one iconic Jan story to share today, but the truth is when you know someone for 45 years, there are so many, it's impossible to pick just one. I met Jan in 1979 when we were randomly assigned to be roommates at freshman orientation in Pitt. You could not have found a more unlikely pair. A Jewish girl from Philadelphia and a Catholic girl from rural Pennsylvania. And our backgrounds were so different, you wouldn't think we would hit it off, but boy did we. We became close, lifelong friends who shared two things: a similar irreverent sense of humor and a penchant for sarcasm. To say that college would not have been the same for me without Jan is an understatement. We never lived together except for one summer, but we were inseparable. It started the day my parents dropped me off at Pitt. After I tearfully watched them drive away, I went straight to Jan's dorm room, and I practically never left. We were together so much that people didn't know who's who, often confusing us for one another, even though Jan was blonde and blue-eyed, and I had dark brown hair and dark eyes. Of course, we thought that was hysterical. I probably spent more time in Jan's dorm room freshman year than I did in my own, and that would become a refrain throughout college. I spent what seemed like hours watching her put on her makeup, and she complained about the color of her eyelids. And I just laughed and rolled my eyes because she was so beautiful inside and out. She was such a caring, warm, funny, and loyal friend. Early on, she taught me how to give her respiratory therapy, which I did throughout college along with several of her friends. We were all happy to do that and to take care of her in that way, reminding her that she needed therapy and scolding her if she laughed. In those days, other than a cough, Jan was remarkably healthy. In fact, I used to say that apart from having CF, she was the most robust person I knew. The fact that she went to college at all was a huge step, one that her parents were only comfortable with because her CF doctors were so close by. We both knew that CF would shorten her life, but it was hard to connect that to the vibrant person that I knew. Between me and Jan, there were no holds barred. I asked her during college how long she expected or hoped to live. And she said that if she lived until she was 50, she would be happy. At the time, 50 sounded really old to us. It seemed so far in the future as to be almost unimaginable. I never forgot that conversation, and when I called her on her 50th birthday, I told her, "You made it." It seemed miraculous, as so much about Jan did. Like everyone who knew her, I was drawn to Jan's zest for life and her curiosity. She was always interested in the water world, and she wanted to experience it to the fullest. One of her extracurricular activities was the Pitt Program Council. I joined because of her, and of course she became president. The council brought various entertainers to campus, and we had really good times. One of the highlights was when we booked Count Basie, who at the time was probably approaching 80 and was in a wheelchair, and we each took the opportunity to give him a kiss. It was through the Pitt Program Council that we got to attend a conference in New York City, which was Jan's first plane ride. The look on her face when she found out they had to de-ice the plane was priceless. I assured her that all would be well, and we had a blast on our trip. Two college students who thought we were so sophisticated ordering melon balls at the hotel bar. Jan was always there for me. When I burst into her room in tears the day I found out my high school boyfriend started seeing someone else. When she looked at me at a party in my apartment and informed me that I was about to be sick. I vehemently denied it until minutes later when I found myself bent over the toilet and Jan pulling my hair, because that's the kind of friend she was. Someone who would hold your hair, rub your back, and tell you that everything was going to be okay. We used to crack each other up until the vein in her forehead popped. I loved that vein, and it was like a goal. Could I get the vein to pop? And when we did, it made us laugh even harder. When we graduated, I sat next to Jan at commencement because where else would I sit? Although we were each about to go our separate ways, we weren't sad because we knew that our friendship would endure, and it did. We stayed close, and with rare exceptions due to great distance or illness or both, we visited each other in every place that each of us lived. After she had her transplant, a group of us from college, who called ourselves the Pit Chicks, I'm sure you've heard all about us, got together every year. Back in the days when people wrote letters, Jan and I wrote to each other. She saved those letters, of course, and I was mortified when she recently reminded me that I edited hers in red ink and sent them back to her. Anyone else would probably stop writing to me and possibly even stop talking to me, but not Jan. She thought it was funny. Writing is how I express myself, so I wrote a poem for Jan that I'd like to share with you now. I always knew you'd leave us, even when we were young, when suffering was an unknown place whose landscape you have yet to explore. I always knew you'd leave too soon, that your laughter would be cut short, that you would miss years and milestones, and that we would miss you. You didn't know the future, but you knew. How like you not to burden us with your pain, your knowledge of what was to come. I always knew you would fight. How were you always ready to do that? Where did you find the strength? How could you be so brave? I always knew you wouldn't give up, even when you could no longer speak, even when you were so close to fading, even with permission to let go. I always knew the day would come when your body would not obey, but your spirit would soar, and we would be left without you, but always, always with you. Jan really was the bravest person I know. From the moment we met, I knew she would leave us too soon, and she lived with that knowledge every single day. But it didn't stop her from laughing, loving, or living. And it didn't stop her from spreading warmth and joy to every person in this room. So even though I will never stop missing her, I feel incredibly lucky to have known her for so long, and for all the times I got to see that vein pop.
I feel incredibly jealous about the people that have known Jan over life. I knew her for a short period, a window in time in the early 2000s when my husband and I brought my daughter Susie to UNC to have her second double bone transplant. She had cystic fibrosis, like Jan. They were incredibly alike in many ways. And the first time we met Jan, the powers that be in the transplant world thought that we needed to come together once a month. My daughter called it pseudo-therapy. And we were supposed to sit around and share our feelings, tell everybody what we thought about things. And nobody wanted to be there. So we got our name tags, we sat in a circle. I can still see Jan and Noel to my left. They were arguing about something. And my husband's sitting there, and everybody's just staring at each other. It's like, what? What are you going to say? What are you going to think? And he couldn't stand it anymore. He's a professor. He had to ask the questions. Maybe there was one word answer. There was a sentence that came back. And I looked at Jan, and she looked like she was going to crawl out of her skin. She jumped. She didn't really jump up. But she's like, I got a story. I got a story, and you're going to love this story. You're going to get something out of it. And I looked at Noel, and his face turned pale. He did not know what story that she was going to tell, but it turned out to be a great story. And what she did that day was bring everybody in. There was a conversation. Oh, hey, I went to the clinic, and that kind of happened to us, and I had some questions, and they didn't answer them. And they would ask Jan, oh, I got the answers for you. I got the answers, just ask me. And we left that. Everybody gets up and goes, and Susie, my daughter, she leans into me, and she goes, Mom, I'm going to be a friend to that woman. And I said, well, okay, well, you don't know her. She said, she is got the wickedest sense of humor. And, as stated before, she understands sarcasm. Susie said, I'm talking to people, I'm sarcastic. They don't get it. Jan White's going to get it. And she grabbed Jan and they talked all the way out the door. And now a year later, Becky Sicali and my husband and Jan and a few other people, we decided that transplant people, they gave up a lot coming to UNC. Some of them lost their jobs to support their families and their kids and their wives and their husbands. And so we got the Sweet Melissa Fund going, and we had this game hall. It was something like this room like this, beautiful. It's Christmas, everybody's beautiful, dressed up. There's music, there's food, there's a silent auction. I'm looking for my kid. I look over there. And there's this group of ladies. Everybody, it was Jan and Susie and Tiffany, a couple other gals. And they had their heads together, and they were laughing so hard their bodies were going like this. And it was like a scrum, and rugby. So Susie, she liked to stifle her, because she snorted. And all of a sudden, it's like the water's flowing. Jan White came up out of the middle of that, her blonde hair flying, and the laugh that came out of that woman's mouth was, well, this is Stacey, because if you don't know who Selma Diamond is, and Lauren McCall, after they smoked about 2 packs of cigarettes, that's the laugh that came out. And it traveled across the room. People were stopping, and they were looking around and trying to figure out what happened. But I knew right then, that was Jan White. That was the essence of her. That was the wonder of her. And she was so intense about everything, and she didn't give a crap if you liked it or not. She was going to laugh. She was going to live her life just the way she wanted to, in intensity and passion. And she had a lot of training. We all did. And she just kept going. Saying, this is it. She just kept going. She just kept going. She just kept going. But Noel just told me today when I was thinking that, well, she left this world in serenity and peace. But evidently she was still fighting and she wasn't giving up. But there's a grace about that too. There's a grace about when you can say to yourself, okay, and my daughter too, I want to be like Jan White. I want to meet my end and do it peacefully and gracefully and be surrounded by the people that love me and that I love. Because when you leave, you ain't taking anything with you. But the love that Jan got from all of you is what she took. And what she left behind is the love that she gave to you. And we all have that. I'm trying not to cry because I knew she she was dying, I knew that. And when I texted her, I didn't hear from her, obviously. No one texted back and said, we lost her on Thursday. And it was over the week. I had myself a good cry. The whole time during that day, I was thinking of a song. Thank God I didn't sing it, but Vince Gill wrote a song for his brother, who died young. He wrote it at the bedside of that brother who died of colon cancer. That's my note. So I'm going to read it to you. And this is Jan. Go rest high on that mountain, for your work on earth is done. Go to heaven shouting, love the Father and the Son. Oh, how we cried the day you left us. Gathered round your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. Go rest high, sweet Jan. Go rest high, and to me that's a prayer. When I hear Vince Gill sing that song, it's a prayer, so I'm going to say amen.
I'm Marilyn Lash, and I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another aspect of Jan's life that many of you may not know as well, and that's her professional life. And Sandra Farmer called and asked me to come and speak about Jan's work in brain injury. I tried to think of when we first met, but I honestly couldn't remember. It just seemed like she was always there. The Department of Mental Health is the lead state agency for brain injury in North Carolina. And Jan was in charge of that program for brain injury services. Can you believe that was often how the conversation started with her, as she summed up a meeting or a phone call or a different opinion than what she wanted to hear. She was a tireless advocate, whether it was finding a place for a survivor to live, or funding for a special program, or help for an overloaded parent or spouse. She made the phone calls. She explored every option because she believed that survivors of brain injury and their families deserved and had a right to live a full life. And if she couldn't meet their needs, she didn't give up. She simply added them to her list of what needed to change. She was literally on a mission to make a difference, no matter how long it took or how many barriers there were. And there were a lot, if any of you have ever worked in state government or dealt with federal agencies. The first time I went to her office to meet at the Department of Mental Health, and let me tell you, you couldn't really call it an office. There was no door. There was a small corner, which she often shared with someone, a desk, a chair, and a file cabinet. And there were stacks of paper, reports, and file folders all over the place. And I thought, how can you stand there? How can you manage to work in a place like this? How can you get anything done here? So we usually met at the Brain Injury Association in North Carolina, or even better, we went out to lunch. A much, much better option. A lot of people underestimated her at first when she showed up with her dimpled smile, her bouncy curls, and her stylish outfit. I remember riding up in the elevator with her for a 2-day conference down in Wilmington. I had my tote bag with my standard little conference outfit, my black suit and my black pumps. Jan had 2 suitcases with shoes and jewelry for every outfit for 2 days. And she wore them all, and she wore them really well. When I chaired the Governor's Council for Traumatic Brain Injury for the state of North Carolina, that was when I really got to work closely with Jan and got to know her. She was my partner, and she was my source for figuring out how to proceed, how to advocate, and how to build allies. We couldn't have made the progress we did in this state without her leadership and her persistence. She was like that dog Eddie in the TV show Frasier, a cute but feisty Jack Russell Terrier, determined and not intimidated by anyone, no matter who you were. She'd march into a meeting armed with her laptop, PowerPoint slides, and spreadsheets, and heaven help you if you wanted to argue with your presentation. As we pushed for expanding brain injury services, there were a lot of folks who said, it's not been done, it's not possible, it's not a priority, there's no money, it'll never happen. But like Eddie the Jack Russell Terrier, she was unstoppable. She figured out how to make brain injury programs in North Carolina better by going to national conferences and working on state and national task forces. She saw how far behind North Carolina was in brain injury funding and programs. And she learned why and how other states across the country were doing better than us. There's a national organization of state head injury administrators, and there she found her mentors. And she eventually became their president and leader of the organization. There's nothing more tedious than a long day of meetings, speakers, and networking. But there was always time at the end of the day to meet Jan in the lounge, share a glass of wine, and then go out for dinner. I still remember when I was first just getting to know her at a spring meeting in Alabama. And the spring in Alabama is practically snow and pollen. We were having drinks, and she pulled out a little baggie of pills. And so I asked if she had allergies, and she said, oh no, these are just my anti-rejection drugs. And I literally did a double take. I had no idea. She looked so healthy, and she was so vibrant. It was hard to imagine what personal health challenges she had already faced and what she would still face down the road. One person can make a real difference, and Jan was that person. She left a legacy in the brain injury community because of the work she did, and this is what she helped to change. More survivors with brain injuries are able to live at home with support and services. Living in a nursing home or an institution is no longer their only option. This is now possible in North Carolina because of a special community-based waiver for Medicaid that brings in federal funds and requires state funds. Jan tirelessly laid the groundwork for this over many, many years. More children and athletes are healthy because of the Sports Concussion Act that was passed in North Carolina. This became her priority when she moved to the Department of Public Health. Again, there were a lot of attitudes that needed to be changed and barriers to overcome. Schools can't afford it. It's not a problem. It's not serious. It's just a bump on the head. That's what she heard over and over and over. But again, she powered up her laptop, she put on her fancy suit, and she traveled around the state, changing attitudes one by one. Children and teens playing sports and on playgrounds are safer today because of her. Coaches and teachers are better informed. North Carolina was Jan's home territory, but her impact went far beyond that. She was simply loved and admired by many all over the country in the brain injury community. I will always treasure her compassion, her commitment, and her gentle soul as she led the fight for so many unable to speak for themselves. She was a shining light to us all. She made lives better. She cared, she made a difference, and we won't forget her.
Hi, I'm Stacey Reed. As I thought about what to say today, I began to think about all the friends that I knew of Jan's. And then I realized there are a lot that I don't know. And then I realized there exists a tremendous amount of wealth among us. Not the kind of wealth you associate with the bank, but a wealth much greater. Let me give you some examples. Side splitting, belly aching, can't catch your breath, vein popping laughter. Or feeling a hug as tears roll down your cheeks after a terrible loss. How about when you've heard the words, "I get it," after you've let loose an angry tirade about injustice you witnessed? Or maybe the relief and triumph you felt after solving a problem that you thought was unsolvable. I'll bet you've had one or all of those experiences with Jan. Have you ever thought of the wealth they provided you? I booked some special bucks as a result of being Jan's wife. Yep. For those of you who didn't know it, Jan was a polygamist. Of sorts. You see, Jan and I are members of the women we love. Many of those women are here in this room today. You may be familiar with this notorious group of women. We go on vacation every year to the coast, and we stay in a house or a condo that will sleep all of us. Of course, that doesn't mean all of us get our same room, get our own room. It so happens that I have a chronic illness, and Jan had a couple of mild ones. But she dubbed the two of us Crips. I know it's politically incorrect nowadays, but this was the 80s, so cut her a break. And because we were a specific subset of our group, we took our own room. Now, the rooms we had typically had one bed, so we slept together. And she started calling me her wife. All of us laughed about it and still do. It's become a badge of honor for me. And it's made a huge deposit of wealth in my personal bank account. I used to refer to Jan as my best friend. Perhaps some of you used to or still do. I had this realization a number of years ago that she never used that term. And it appeared to me that there was this odd translation of the superlative term best, and that it had the quality to apply to many things, or people in this case, in the same category. In this context, I think each friend to her was different enough to be in a category of his or her own. I have a lot of those friends now too. Ching ching. Jan had, shall we say, strong opinions. Name a topic. Disability rights, women's rights, foreign policy, the best whiskey, so on and so forth. But she embraced her friends' opinions too, whether in agreement or not, but she'd often ask about her opinion. And it wasn't to invite an argument, it was in an effort to learn. But she often countered. And her counter was always backed by thoughtful reflection and sound evidence. The woman did her homework. The evidence behind the best whiskey was a little shaky, but we'll move on. If you continue to disagree with her, though, neither of you walked away angry. Your friendship suffered no damage. Rather, you just walk away more well-informed. I hope as you leave today, you can pull out the memories of your times with Jan from your metal bank accounts, saved accounts, safes, and savor the wealth that she has bequeathed you. It's really hard to be at the end of this. I'm Dottie, her oldest sister. And I know we don't have a few days for me to tell you about her, but then you all have your own stories and memories of the most amazing. Some of the things that you're going to hear me say have already been referenced, so please bear with me. I didn't have anybody else's script. I have two scripture passages that I think speaks to who Jan is and who she was, and how she lived her life. I'll read one now and close with the other. The other comes from the prophet Micah, and he says, the prophet wrote, "He has shown you what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with your God." These three attributes, justice, love, and humility, these three name how Jan approached life. And that would map it out for her. As a child, I wish my brothers were here. As a child, she was always in charge. I'm sure that you're surprised by that. At least she thought she was, or she wanted to. We used to tell her that when we would get a little loud, my father would stand up. That's all he had to do was stand up, and four of us would scatter. And she would stand there and bat her eyelashes at me. She was funny, always laughing, directing traffic, and always on the move. She was adventuresome, intrigued by many things, and self-directing. She knew what she wanted, and she made the plan. There's a funny story about the plan, and I won't get into that now. She would go to college and pursue the career that would take her to many new places and on many new adventures. This room is full of people. This room full of people is a testimony to those many places and adventures. My family, who couldn't be here today to celebrate Jan's life, thanks you for your support, love, and care, not just for Jan, but for her beloved Noel. I asked my nieces and nephews to send just one word that would describe me and Jan. None of them could give one word. But I want to share with you what one of our nephews shared with me. And he said he struggled with this, and he woke up in the middle of the night with these thoughts. The definition of unacceptable: not satisfactory, nor allowable. It's unacceptable that a child was given a grim outlook from the start. She had no idea what was or wasn't unacceptable, but she had a future. It's unacceptable that a woman fought harder than anyone all the time and continued to beat the odds, and still heard about the grim outlook. But she fought on. It's unacceptable that a woman with so much passion for her family and friends, her job, her life, still had so many hills to climb. And she climbed. It's unacceptable if you yourself ever forget Janice. She will always be the one who accepted everyone and everything that was thrown her way. And Jan, the woman
who somehow made unacceptable acceptable. That's just from one of my nephews. She always accepted the unacceptable. She never gave in and never stopped doing what she wanted to do. Right, no? She faced her issues head on. She stormed through the hardest and came out on the other side with that big, beautiful smile. She was always thinking of the other person, as everybody has already said. She researched medical assistance for people. She helped to collect food for food banks and many more activities. She participated in clinical trials that helped develop new medicine or treatments for others. She worked for others even when she was not a Christianist. We prayed for a miracle that she be cured. That miracle was not realized as we had hoped, but the miracle of her life is what we have to hold on to. The miracle of medicine, that she outlived our sister Irma by 47 years. The miracle of 21 years after her knee transplant. And the miracle of 29 years with Noel. The miracle of all of you in her life to hold her up when she was low. The miracle of a grace-filled time. She never gave up. She never stopped praying. Not that she didn't question, but she believed that God was with her. And with these thoughts in mind, I end with scripture that has Jan's life written all over it. From the second letter of St. Timothy. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord will award to me on that day. Thank you.
Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Little darling, it's been a cold, long winter. Little darling, it feels like years since you've been here. Here comes the sun, do-do-do. Here comes the sun. I say it's alright. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. It's alright.